Hello and assalamualaikum to all of you. Today we are going to talk about system unit. A system unit is a part of a computer that houses the primary devices that perform operations and produce results for complex calculations. It includes the motherboard, CPU, RAM, and other components, as well as the case in which these devices are housed. This unit performs the majority of the functions that a computer is required to do. These are the list of type of system unit. So we have number one, we have phone like iPhone 15 and so on. And then we have laptop like MSI or Acer Nitro 5 and tablet. And then we have a wearable like Apple Watch, and then we have the desktop. And then these are the components that we have. So can you guys explain about these components?
Okay, thank you, moderator. I think I can start with the motherboard. Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And hello, my name is Mohamed Taufiq. I will be referred as Taufiq during this discussion. So the first component is motherboard. Um, some people might say it as the system board, or some people also call it as main board. But most people refer main board or system board as motherboard. It kind of acts like something that connects all of the components together. It acts as a data path, and it traffic and monitor the data transmission between the component and other component. Some components that is connected to motherboard are like RAM or CPU and others. Fun fact: first motherboard that is invented is in 1981. It is first called as planar or breadboard. And I think we can continue to the second person, which is Ayman, for the in-depth specification of motherboard.
Yeah, I'm going to be talking about the motherboard specifications, such as sockets. A socket is the array of pins and the secure mechanism that hold a processor in place and connect the motherboard to the available processing power. If a CPU is connected via CPU socket, it's not soldered and can therefore be replaced. CPU sockets are more common with gaming PCs than they are on laptops. In a computer system, a chipset is a set of electronic components in an integrated circuit known as data flow management system that manages the data flow between processor memory and peripherals. It is usually found on the motherboard. Chipsets are usually designed to work with a specific family of microprocessors because it controls communications between the processor and external devices. The chipset play a crucial role in determining system performance. Okay, the slots. Expansion slot is the connection or port inside a computer on the motherboard. It provides an installation point for a hardware expansion card to be connected. For example, if you wanted to install a new video card in the computer, you would purchase a video expansion card and install that card into the compatible expansion slot. The most commonly used expansion slot is the PCI Express expansion slot. Okay, I'm going to be talking about the bus lines. The bus lines provide data pathways that connect various system components. Every bus line has a bus width, which is the number of bits that can travel at once. There are two types of bus lines. The system bus connects the CPU to memory on the system board. The expansion bus connects the CPU to other components and to slots on the system board. Okay, I think the next one.
I've done some research for the motherboard. So I found there are two kinds of motherboards. The first one is for gaming motherboard. So I found out a brand is called Gigabyte, which is the model of Gigabyte Z690 Aorus Master, which costs around 470 US dollar, which is around 1,950 Malaysia ringgit, and it has a chipset of Intel Z690 Express chipset, It supports DDR5 memory until 6400 megahertz. It has 4 DIMM slots, and the maximum memory it supports is until 138 gigabytes. And there's another one is built for content creators who work in 3D modeling and rendering animation or media production. So I found out a brand is called Asus, and the model is Asus ProArt X570 Creator Wi-Fi. It costs around $430 and it's around 1,784 ringgit Malaysia. And it has a chipset of AMD X570 chipset. It supports DDR4 memory until 4,800 megahertz. It has 4 DRAM slots, and the maximum memory is 128 gigabytes. So I think we'll proceed to Azhan. So can you tell us any tips or the ways how to install the motherboard?
Hello, I'm Azhan. I will be telling you about the ways to install motherboards and the tips. So for installing the motherboard, first of all, you obviously need to open your computer case, and you also need to ground yourself to a metal or any metal item. But then you need to install and replace your I/O panel shield, which is the back of the motherboard, and find the standoff so you can place the motherboard onto the standoff, which is on the PC case itself. After that, install the front panel onto the motherboard, and that are the main step. But to continue, you can connect your components such as the power supply, the fans, the CPU, the GPU, and after installing all of those things, you can adjust your wiring so it can be clean and look nice. Alright, that's all for me.
Okay, for Q&A on this point, motherboard. So Azhan, can you tell me which motherboard design style is most widely implemented?
The motherboard design style which is most likely widely implemented is the ATX style, the full one.
Okay, next we have a processor.
Okay, so now I'm going to talk about the processor. So as we all know, processor, which in other words CPU, is at the heart of everything that you do on your computer. So it is imperative to choose a CPU that is the best suit for your needs. So a processor contains a single chip called a microprocessor. There are also two basic components for the processor, which are control unit that tells the computer system how to carry out a program's instruction, and arithmetic logic unit, which in short form ALU, that performs arithmetic and logical operation. The microprocessor chips capacity are expressed in word size, which are the number of bits that can be processed at one time. For example, like 16, 32, or 64 bits. And on the other hand, a processor's clock speed is also one of the important specification of processor. It refers to the numbers of cycles that perform every second. So for example, a 3.1 gigahertz processor can perform 3.1 billion in 1 second. So the higher the clock speed, of course, the more tasks the processor can complete, and the faster your computer will generally run. So it's important to note that it's not always best to compare the processor clock speeds of different generation or manufacturers. Just for example, like a 7 Gen Intel Core i5-7500, 3.4 gigahertz, will be outperformed by a 10 Gen Intel Core i5 also, but it's 10500, 3.1 gigahertz. But although it has a lower clock speed, but it still can outperform the one which has a higher clock speed. So there are also other factors that will affect the specification of a processor, such as core count, multi-threading, L cache, and chipset. So this will also affect the performance of a processor. So may Azhan tell us about multi-core and specialty processor?
Right, for the multi-core processors, it is two or more separate and independent CPU within a system unit. For example, quad-core or octa-core. But the latest type of multi-core processors is uh, the Intel Core X series, which is like Intel Xeon, I think, which can deliver up to 18 cores for gaming, creative production, and multitasking. For the specialty processors, uh, the processors can do a parallel processing, which is the ability to divide tasks into parts that can be distributed into each core. Uh, Windows 8, 10, 11, and macOS support this parallel processing. The example of multi-core processors and that supports parallel processing is like AMD, A series or Ryzen, and Intel i3, i5, i7, and so on. For the And also for the specialty processors, there is also co-processors, which is designed to improve specific computing operation, such as the GPU. It is designed to handle a variety of specialized tasks, such as rendering 3D images, uh, like for games, encrypting data, and standard features in gaming computers. Uh, that's all for the multi-core and specialty processors. Next is for Taufiq to explain how to install and the tips.
Okay, thank you. So to install processor, it's pretty much simple. It should be installed at motherboard. So what you need to do is first there is a lever at the motherboard. At the CPU socket, you just need to detach the lever and then just lay down your processor gently as possible, and then make sure the notch or the triangle sign in the socket and your processor is aligned, and then after that just latch back the lever to make sure the CPU fits at the socket, and then after that you can apply thermal paste manually to make sure the heat transfer is as efficient as possible, or you can use also CPU cooler which has pre-applied thermal paste. Then the heat transfer between CPU and CPU cooler will be much more efficient. And I think that's how you install the CPU at motherboard. And then we can continue to Ayman about the prices or brands about CPU.
Okay, there are two major manufacturers of computer processors, Intel and AMD. Both both manufacturers of CPUs have three lines of processors based on performance and cost. These lines change names as companies retool their products. The budget processors are designed to run basic computer tasks efficiently. These CPUs will easily handle most office programs, web browsing, photo editing, and other general tasks. The price range is between $90 to $150. The mainstream or mid-range processors can be physically large and can handle higher performance tasks such as 3D gaming, video editing, and other multimedia intense applications. The mainstream CPUs use more power and could have cores and caches that are not compatible with older motherboards and memory. The price range is between $200 and $350. Okay, the fastest processors, known as extreme or high-end, are used for gaming, intensive graphics, creating and editing, professional videos, and statistical analysis. High-end CPUs use more power and require more memory. The price range is between 400 more than $1,000. Okay, that's it for the brands.
Now for Q&A session. For processor, Jurimi, may I know what type of socket is used for most processors in modern system?
For now, for Intel, it normally use LGA sockets, and for AMD, they mostly use PGA sockets.
For the RAM, which is random access memory, it is a chip that holds program and data that CPU is currently processing. It can be volatile or temporary contents which are lost when the computer is powered off. Uh, for example, RAM can be DDR3, which is 1600 megahertz, DDR4, which is 2133 megahertz till 3200 megahertz, and the latest ones are DDR5, which can hold more than which the max speed is more than the previous one, which is 3200 megahertz. Can you tell us about the cache memory and virtual memory, Ayman?
Okay. Virtual memory is a feature of an operating system that enables a computer to be able to compensate shortages of physical memory by transferring pages of data from random access memory to disk storage. This process is done temporarily and is designed to work as a combination of RAM and space on the hard disk. This means that when RAM runs low, virtual memory can move data from it to a space called paging file. Okay, the cache memory is a chip-based computer component used to reduce the average time to access data from the main memory. The cache is a smaller and faster memory which stores copies of the data from frequently used memory locations. There are various different independent caches in a CPU which store instructions and data. Okay, that's it.
Should we continue to the price or brands? If so, then okay. So in the market right now, the prices of RAM is dependent on the design or clock speed or the size of the RAM. So some of the popular brand is like Corsair, Kingston, HyperX, and the much faster the RAM is, then the more expensive it will be. For something like a data 8 gig 2600 megahertz it is around 120 ringgit. But for something like Kingston HyperX that has RGB, because the design will just make it much more expensive, and then 16 gig, and then if it is a much faster speed, it will be around even 300 or even 500 ringgit. The prices depends on the design and the speed and also the size and also the brand. So I think we can continue tuning about how to install a RAM.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about how we are going to install the RAM. So first, you need to open your RAM slots. Each RAM slot will have two small clips at either side, and you just need to press these clips down to open them. But a gentle reminder that they don't need to move very far, so don't use too much force. And so then insert the RAM, just simply press it down into the slot. And when the RAM stick is fully depressed, the locking tabs at each side should click back into place. And once they have, you're all set. So in the case if a motherboard with 4 RAM slots, it's probably you'll want to install your first RAM stick into the slot label. And the second stick should go into slot 2, which isn't next to the slot 1. If you have the third stick, it will go into slot 3, which is between slot 1 and slot 2. And finally, the fourth stick should go into slot 4. But just in case, please consult your motherboard manual, as some motherboards may suggest installing RAM in different order. So that's all for me.
Right. And then for Q&A session, Ming, may I know why is RAM temporary?
In my opinion, because the information stored in RAM will lost if the power supply is turned off. For example, like programs that are currently running and open files will store in RAM, but once you turn off the power supply, it will just lost.
And then we have ROM.
Okay, I think I can talk about the ROM specification. So ROM is read-only memory. It is information that is stored by manufacturer. It is non-volatile, unlike RAM, and computer cannot change the information. Um, ROM also contains special instruction, just like starting up a computer or accessing the memory or even handling keyboard input, right? And I think that's it for the specification of ROM.
Okay,
Thank you.
basically you can't like install the ROM because it comes mounted on the motherboard, but they are usually placed near the motherboard's chipset and the peripheral card slots. The ROM chip will feature a mix of the BIOS manufacturer's name on it and the word BIOS. Onboard ROM chips with program data will carry the motherboard's manufacturer's name instead. Okay, that's it for the ROM.
So, talking about RAM and ROM, I would like to slightly talk about the flash memory. So, flash memory is a special type of memory that works like both RAM and ROM, but you can write the information to flash memory like you can with the RAM, but the information isn't erased when the power is off, just like with the ROM. So, but sadly, the flash memory isn't as fast as RAM, so we don't expect it to replace standard computer memories anytime soon. So, that's it for me.
Okay, thank you. And then we move to video card.
So I'll going to talk about the video card. So video card, as known as graphic card, is an expansion card for your PC that is responsible for rendering image to the display. On desktop PC, we have the option of installing a discrete graphics card into the PCIe slot. This graphic card can be changed and upgraded in the future. And for gaming PC, graphic cards are absolutely necessary as most modern 3D games require one at least. Other applications based on like 3D graphics, like modeling, animation, and so on, also require a graphic card. And graphic card also have a lot of technical specification that determine its performance. If you're planning to buy a graphic card, then it's imperative to evaluate key specs like GPU, memory, and also the power requirements. So which spec matters? So the first one is the graphic card memory amount. You'll need a card with at least 6 gigabytes and preferable 8 gigabyte or more for gaming at 1080 pixels. You'll need more memory if you play with all settings turned up. And the second one is the form factor. It's very important. You need to make sure that you have room in your case. In your case for your card. And other things like ports and clock speed are somewhat important too. Among cards with the same GPU, some will be manufacturer overclocked to a slightly higher speed, which can make modest difference in frame rate. So, Azhan, may you tell us how to install the graphic card?
Okay, first of all, after you powered down your PC and hit the back switch of the PSU, extract the side panel to open up the case, then remove the screws holding the GPU bracket at the back of the case. Then unlock the PCIe slot clip, and if you are if you are already having a GPU, you can remove the installed GPU and hover the new GPU over onto the PCIe slot. Then push down gently on the slide connector and ensure to secure the lock clips into place. Then screw back the rear back panel and secure the card into the chassis. Then connect any required PSU cables. Depends on the graphic card itself. Reattach the slide And after you have done that, you can install the required drivers. Right, that's all. To you, Ayman.
I'm going to be talking about the brands of the video cards. There are a lot of video cards manufacturers in the market, such as Nvidia, AMD, Asus, MSI, and Zotac. You can find a graphics card for as cheap as $70 or as expensive as $3,000. But for now, the graphics card that offers the best performance is the Nvidia RTX 3090, which sells for $1,500. Okay, that's it for the video cards.
Okay, thank you, Ayman. Ayman, may I know when was the first video card created?
Yeah, it was invented in the 1980s by a company called IBM.
Thank you, Ayman. So next we move to power supply.
Power supply, a computer requires a direct current power. So this power supply converts the AC from the wall outlets into DC. Power supply supplies the whole power. Power supply supplies the whole electricity to the whole computer. It is one of the most important parts in the computer because if it breaks, it can short circuit the whole computer components, which can make other components break too. To you, Taufik, for the
Oh,
price and
okay.
brands.
Okay, thank you. So there is couple brands in power supply industry. The most popular one is Corsair, and also can find like Prime, Titanium, or XPG company power supply. And the price depends on the power, the DC output itself. Like if it is 750 watt, then it will be around 700 ringgit or even higher. Or if it is like 450 watt, it will be as much as 300 ringgit. And yeah, I think that's it for the price and brand. We can continue to how to install power supply. Chun.
Okay, so first you need to absolutely you need to find a power supply for your computer. So the power supply that you buy depends on the computer's motherboard and housing size, meaning that you'll need to do some research of your motherboard model to see which power supplies will fit. So after you buy the power supply, you need to open the computer case, and you should be looking at the computer's internal at this point, and make sure that you lay the computer case on its side, which with the exposed side is facing up. Okay, so then you need to set the power supply's voltage switch. If there's a voltage switch on the power supply, switch it to 110 volt or 115 volt setting. This will ensure that your power supply provides power without damaging the components to which it's connected. Next, you need to find the power supply's intended location. The power supply unit typically sit at the top of the case. Therefore, computer's power cable usually plugs into the top back section of the case. And you can also refer to your computer's instruction manual for proper placement of the power supply unit. And after you found the location, insert the power supply. Your power supply should have a distinct back with plugs and a fan, which is the bottom of with a fan on it. And you need to screw the power supply into place and attach the power supply to the motherboard. Then you'll need to find the main power cable on the power supply, which usually is the one with the largest plugs, and attach it to the long rectangle port on the motherboard. Then attach the secondary power supply power cable to the motherboard as well. Don't forget to connect the power supply to other computer components too. So after that, you need to close and plug back in your PC. And if everything works properly, the fan on the power supply should turn on and your computer will boot like usual. But if you hear a beep sound and nothing happened, then something inside is not connected correctly, or the computer supply is not providing enough power to a component. So make sure you keep an eye on it. So move on to Ayman about the
I'm going to
ports.
be talking about the ports. Ports are connection sockets for external devices. There are two types of ports, the standard ports and the specialized ports. The standard ports includes video graphics adapter and digital video interface that provide connections to analog and digital monitors. And there are the USBs that connects several devices to the system unit. And we have the FireWire ports that connect CAN ports and storage devices. And we have the Ethernet for networking. It allows you to connect multiple computers for sharing files or to a DSL or a cable modem for internet access. About the specialized ports, they include external serial advanced technology attachment, eSATA, that provides a very high speed hard drive connection, high definition multimedia interface, the HDMI, that provides high definition video and audio. The musical instrument digital interface, it's used for connecting musical instruments, and mini display port that provides connection for a large monitor. Okay, that's it for the ports.
Okay, thank you, Ayman. Ayman, may I know, does a laptop have an expansion port?
No, laptops do not have an expansion slots, but some laptops have PC cards that can be inserted into the side of the laptop. They may also have a card bus slot for an express card to be added.
All right, thank you, Ayman. So I think we can go to the conclusion. So basically, the term system unit is generally to differentiate uh, between the computer itself and its peripheral devices such as keyboard, mouse, and monitor. So I think that's all from us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.